that is a key strength, as long as, I guess you let me know if I'm portraying this right, if you can not let that be the exception instead of the rule, that really is what needs to shine through, and then not feel like, okay, now I still have to work harder. That's a skill that is a premium. You should actually not have to work. When you possess that and can exercise it, you really don't need to work harder. You can actually work, in my opinion, fewer hours and less frantically than the rest, when you can diffuse bombs, once or twice a week.
Absolutely. And not just diffuse bombs, but really hyper-focus on what's important to your business, right? As a startup, you can be distracted with shiny objects. Many times startups fail because they have too many opportunities and they don't pick one or two or even three to focus on, right? They kind of let themselves go the way of the dodo and say, oh, here we are, thinking they can be the Swiss Army knife and everything to everybody, and they don't need to be everything to everybody. And that is maturity in general, but really focusing on what matters, knowing what your key metrics are, what equals success for you, and sticking to it.
Well, and that kind of brings us towards the sticking to it. There's a word out there that sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, depending on how someone describes it, and it's grit. You've got a word for it from your history, but I'm going to turn it over to you about the finish, and not as in finish line, but the Finnish version of it.
Yeah, so my Mumu, she's my grandmother, we grew up all the time saying, you weren't really supposed to cry about anything. She's like, where is your sisu? We're like, Mama, what is sisu? And there was not a direct translation of what sisu was. So it took us a while over the years of her saying, just find your sisu, to understand exactly what she meant. And it turns out that the sisu it's the Finnish national characteristic. They've dubbed themselves, with sisu. And you can imagine, right, living in Finland where, there's 50 days of the year are complete darkness and the temperatures are ridiculously cold. That is not an easy place to live a lot of the time. But digging in the face of adversity, giving it your sisu is what I relate to. It's words that have echoed for me through so many times in my life, from a young girl, being told you can't do something, coming from a family who's never gone to college, never mind law school. I was told that I wasn't going to be able to do these things. And I just always looked back and said, I've got sisu, I've got it. And I did it. So that is that the closest thing in English translation is your grit, but that's what it is you don't give up.
Well, and for those who don't, know, Finland, once again, was rated the happiest place on Earth.
One of the best education systems.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a number of things. It's not just because they're all sitting on the beach for, the days of sun that they do have, but and my daughter had just, she had a week after the spring session, she had a week of traveling abroad, the college class, and it started in Finland. And I told her, because the award had just come out, I said, please leave it the way you found it. I said, it's the happiest place on earth. Don't screw it up. But now that I look at you talk about where that term has to come from, I mean, that is how you're happy. If that is your motto, as you say, in a place that not only can be awful dark, but is ranked worldwide to be the most content people, and not because you're sitting on top of oil reserves or a gold mine. It says a lot. Just so you carried your sisu around. Did people, it sounds like a doll, or some type of childhood trinket that was
or some
your
good
luck. Yes.
Yep.
Well.
And then you're not allowed to feel sorry for yourself, right? Like, you've got your bumps and your bruises. You choose you choose your path is about what that is, and it's choosing your attitude to go through life. Yeah.
Now, was it delivered without guilt or shame? Because there is the version of, hey, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And then you kind of feel bad that you're feeling bad. So while you're feeling bad, you're trying to start feeling good. That version of forcing, grit, like if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Makes you stronger.
I go,
Yeah.
not really. Sometimes it leaves you on life support for a long time.
Yeah. I think there's probably times that it was delivered in both ways, more consistently as it's in you.
Right.
You can do it. You just need to find it. And just like Coach Ambrose and Shifty, hey, you're a natural. Those words are just powerful if you take them and internalize them.
Well, let's stick with that a little bit because, again, as I told you, I hate top 10 lists. I can get stuff out of it because I've got the life experiences. But when you say, "Hey, go find it," well, thanks, Mister. I appreciate that. If I could just go find it, I'd have had it. But that was a little bit more than what Shifty and Coach Ambrose did. When you say, go find that grit, I don't picture you walking away. That to me seems like that's your opening statement. When you're working with people, these entrepreneurs that maybe, I'm assuming some of them, they've lost a bit of their identity. As you say, they're not playing. They've been at the highest levels. They're trying to figure out what to do. How do you help them, I guess, maybe find a different version of grit without just telling them you're going to have to, really own up to this and change things?
Well, that's different, right? So for this current community, they've got it. They're playing at the highest levels. They've got the grit, and it's not necessarily about. I guess it's more analogizing what they had to do to get to that level of play to what it takes to build a business or what it takes to learn how to be your own investor. That's I think it's already there for them, and they on some level know that. Right? They're professional athletes. They are an elite group. So it's, I think, more just tapping into that competitive, I'm not going to lose spirit for them.
Well, and I think what you said there, though, I think with some exceptions, there are some people who've had a really rough road that just don't know. They can't find it. It's buried far too deep. But a lot of us just need that, to finding our way back to it, because we've all been king of the hill at some point. There are, most of us have, yet the majority of those, at least, we've won, we've been on the championship team or the team that won or whatever it may have been, but it gets buried with, I guess, maybe lost perspective. And I think that's something that we need to pass maybe down a little bit further to those that are trying to find their way up to becoming that. With your kids, how do you deal with them, I guess, when they're having their days? Do you find your Sisu?
I do. I give it to them too, because I know, the way that it impacted me. Now I've got two very different children. They don't, they're not similar in almost any way, except by looks. And so it works differently. And I've had to learn that approach for each of them is what does it take to motivate that individual? And their Sisu looks different from the other one's Sisu. And that's remembering that we're not competing as a family. Neither of those two are competing against each other. So what is in you? What do you want? What's going to make you happy? What do you need to do that? Just identifying that as your Sisu.
Well, and I think the key there is you're not assigning them a definition of success. Because they'll never find the grit for somebody else's vision. It doesn't success change?
And doesn't success change with whatever it is you're doing, right? So my journey, we've heard through the night, has been very different, a very untraditional, I'll say, right? From a lawyer to in the sports world and in venture capital and from an athletic standpoint, going from throwing a discus, being the opposite of a runner, to saying, I'm going to run 6 marathons. So I ran 6 marathons, and then I decided a new challenge would be Taekwondo. Went out and got my well, I'm still working towards it, but I've gotten my second degree black belt, and so I'm going to working towards my third. Success is not a thing. Like it changes, right? So making sure that you're identifying it inside of the mission at hand is so important. And where you are at that moment in your life and what you're capable of is going to be different than it is going to be tomorrow or that it was yesterday.
Well, and you started opening up a whole different resume there, which leads me to a good closing, which is you're going to be going to battle here shortly, literally for a good cause. Can you tell us about what you're going to be doing with Haymakers for Hope?
Yeah, sure. I'm super excited about this one, and I'm also extremely nervous. Haymakers for Hope is an amazing organization that started a few years back, probably 4 or 5 years back, by a cancer survivor, Julie Kelly, and Andrew Meyerson, who decided to bring boxing to the world of fundraising. Those two met. So what it is it's affiliated with the Dana-Farber Center, started here in Boston. You elect or you apply to fight. They match you up with a trainer who donates his time and knowledge and expertise for boxing, trains you as an elite, that's a strong word, as a boxer, because what happens at the end of those 4 months is you compete in a USA Boxing sanctioned event, which is the real deal. It is not just a go on, put some fluffy gloves on and punch at the air. You are learning to box, and it generates, I think they've raised over $9 million at this point. It generates a lot of money because it's something that, for me, I correlate this training with the fight that my loved ones who have passed had, right? And it was not easy for them, and this isn't easy for me, but it's something that I feel does give back and makes me appreciate their journeys and what they went through. And I'm really excited to partake in the event. In October 10th is the event here in Boston.
And is there a way for people to make donations to it, to support the event?
Yeah, absolutely. Haymakersforhope.org. Our fight is called the Bells of the Brawl. So it's 15, 16 fights on fight night. And pretty soon, I think that they need another week or so to put up our fight cards. And that way, donate please to the cause in general. But for me in particular, they'll have the lineup there, and you can find me under the Bells of the Brawl 2018.
Excellent. And Tracy, unfortunately, our hour has flown by.
Yeah, that was fast.
Yeah, I it's the best and worst part of the show is that it's done, but when it flies by, well, we know we were having fun doing this. So let's give your contact information one more time to everybody, how they can get a hold of you, Tracy Deforge, at the Players Impact.
Sure, thank you. Tracy, Tracy, at theplayersimpact.com, and the website is www.theplayersimpact.com. On Twitter, I'm at Tracy Deforge. Very easy to get in touch with me there. And Dave, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate your interest in my story, and I hope that others who hear it are inspired in some way, shape, or form, and then I'm happy to be helpful.
Oh, well, thank you. And I definitely want to invite you to be part of a new podcast. Again, the collection that we're starting this summer. It's called Leveling the Field, and it is going to be shorter 30-minute group discussions that are focusing strictly on women's issues, centering mostly around sports, but obviously gets into all aspects of life because you've really helped talk about several of those, and you are definitely one of those strong women out there that need to have their voice put on another platform. So again, girls like my daughters, have a better path to follow. So I do want to thank you for sure, and I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. So this is Dave Briglio with Tracy Deforge on Making the Play, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Down a dirty road, started